A mafia boss found a black woman hanging from his Chicago penthouse roof, and everything changed forever. She wasn't an assassin. She wasn't a victim. She was a forensic accountant with secrets that could destroy entire criminal empires. And he was the most dangerous man in Chicago who would do anything to protect her. When Dante Cavaletti discovered Zara Mitchell tangled in rappelling gear, bleeding and barely conscious on his rooftop, he thought she was just another threat. But she was about to become the one woman who would challenge everything he believed about power, survival, and love. $5 million. That's the bounty the Russian Bratva placed on her head. Corrupt FBI agents hunting her. Safe house massacred. And now she's trapped in the penthouse of the most ruthless mafia boss in the city, a man known as the Ghost of Chicago. He could kill her. He could turn her in. Instead, he decided to make her his. But when the Bratva kidnaps his teenage sister and demands Zara as ransom, a war erupts that will paint Chicago's streets red. And the only way to survive is to trust each other completely. Who really needs protection? The mafia boss with blood on his hands? Or the woman who's about to burn his entire world down? Blood debts and broken wings. Some love stories begin with a single deadly mistake. The Chicago night swallowed the city's glittering skyline, but inside Dante Cavaletti's penthouse, darkness had a different texture. Blood dried on his knuckles, rust-brown evidence of the evening's business. A traitor's final screams still echoed in his memory, a reminder that mercy was a luxury he couldn't afford. Lorenzo's voice cut through the silence. "Boss, we've got a situation on the rooftop." Dante's gray eyes narrowed. No one breached his sanctuary, not ever. The penthouse was more than a home. It was a fortress, a statement of power that defined Chicago's most ruthless mafia empire. The rooftop garden was a marvel of engineering and wealth. Bulletproof glass, custom-designed greenhouses, surveillance so tight, a sparrow couldn't land without being identified. And now, somehow, someone had crashed through that perfection. A woman hung suspended, tangled in rappelling gear, her body pressed against the shattered glass ceiling. Her dark skin glistened with rain and blood, athletic build twisted in a way that suggested professional training. No identification, no obvious weapons. Just a mystery suspended in his private space. "Cut her down," Dante ordered, his voice ice-cold. Lorenzo's team carefully lowered her unconscious body. Up close, Dante studied her. Mid to late 20s. Professionally equipped climbing gear. Tactical clothing designed for urban infiltration. Not a random intruder. Not a street-level threat. Something more. Vincent arrived minutes later, worry etching lines into his weathered face. "This looks like a potential hit, Dante. Could be a setup." Dante's fingers traced the edge of her tactical jacket. Professional. Precise. Someone had gone to extraordinary lengths to breach his most secure space. But why? The unconscious woman was taken to the underground interrogation room, a space designed to extract truth from the most stubborn subjects. Stainless steel, clinical lighting, restraints built to hold even the most dangerous prisoners. When she finally stirred, the first thing she would see was Dante Cavaletti. Her wrists were bound to a reinforced metal chair, leather restraints holding her in place. Her breathing changed, from unconscious to alert in milliseconds. Professional training, survival instinct. Her eyes opened, dark, intelligent, fearless. Not the look of someone who expected to die. Dante entered wearing a midnight blue Brioni suit that cost more than most people's annual salary. Blood still faintly stained his knuckles. A deliberate choice. A reminder of the violence that lived just beneath his polished surface. "Who sent you?" he asked. No introduction, no pleasantries. Just pure, controlled menace. The woman met his gaze without flinching. Something flickered in her eyes. Not fear. Something closer to calculation. "I'm not here to kill you," she said. Her voice was steady, professional. "I'm here because you might be the only person who can help me stay alive." Outside, Chicago's night continued. But in this underground room, a dangerous dance had just begun. Dante didn't smile, didn't move, just watched her, a predator evaluating unexpected prey. "Start talking," he said. "You have exactly 60 seconds before I decide whether you're more valuable alive or dead." The woman took a breath, 1 heartbeat, 2, and then she began to speak. Her name was Zara Mitchell, a forensic accountant who had accidentally discovered something that made her a target. The Russian Bratva wanted her dead. The FBI couldn't protect her. And now, hanging in Dante Cavaletti's interrogation room, she was about to make a proposition that would change everything. One thing was certain. Nothing would be the same after this moment. Dante could feel it in his bones. The game was about to change. The cold bit into her bones before consciousness fully returned. Metal chair, restraints, antiseptic and something else. Copper, blood. Zara Mitchell blinked, forcing her eyes to focus. Steel walls, concrete floor, a single overhead light casting harsh shadows. She tested her wrists, zip-tied to the chair's armrests, circulation already growing numb. Not her first time being detained, but definitely her most dangerous. The door opened. Dante Cavalletti moved like predatory grace. Expensive charcoal suit, blood-splattered knuckles, eyes the color of a Chicago winter. No emotion, no mercy, just calculation. "You have 10 seconds, he said, to convince me why I shouldn't kill you right now." Her throat was dry. Fear wanted to make her stammer. Instead, she met his gaze. "I'm a forensic accountant, not an assassin." He circled her chair slowly like a wolf, studying wounded prey. Each step echoed. Deliberate, menacing. "An accountant who repels through skylights, who appears in my private penthouse at midnight. I was running. From who? The people who just murdered 2 U.S. Marshals, the ones who want me dead." Dante's hand touched her shoulder, not a caress, but a threat made physical. His fingers were ice cold, calloused from violence. Specific details, now. So she gave him specifics, numbers, transaction dates. The complex money laundering scheme her firm had been running for the Russian Bratva. Financial details so intricate, so precise that lying would be impossible. "The shell companies are registered through offshore accounts in Malta," she said flatly. "Baltic Continental Holdings controls 3 subsidiary shell corporations. The primary money movement happens through cryptocurrency exchanges in Estonia, routed through—" He raised a hand, stopped her. "How do you know these details?" "I discovered them while conducting a routine audit. My firm thought I wouldn't understand. They were wrong." Dante switched languages rapid fire, Russian then Italian, watching her reaction. She understood nothing, genuine confusion crossing her face. Her lack of response seemed to intrigue him more than any prepared answer would have. "You have 1 hour, he finally said. "My people will verify every single detail you've provided. If one number is incorrect, if one transaction doesn't match—" He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. The threat hung in the air like smoke. When Lorenzo entered, massive, tattooed, clearly Dante's head of security, Dante issued crisp instructions. Verify her story, full background check, financial forensics, and keep her restrained. Dawn's first light crept through a narrow window. Zara watched Dante leave, realized she was completely at the mercy of the man Chicago's criminal underground called the Ghost, and her only chance of survival depended on proving her story was true. Her father would have appreciated the irony. A Mitchell, once again fighting for survival against impossible odds. She took a deep breath and waited. The cold fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting a harsh glare across the steel interrogation room. Zara Mitchell's wrists ached where the restraints had been. Red marks, a testament to her earlier struggles. She'd been here for hours, the sterile white walls closing in with each passing minute. The door opened with a metallic scrape. Lorenzo entered first, his massive frame blocking the light for a moment before Marcus, Dante's tech specialist, slipped in behind him. Marcus carried a slim laptop, his fingers dancing across the keyboard with practiced efficiency. "Well?" Dante's voice cut through the room like a knife, even before he fully entered. He was immaculate, dark charcoal suit pressed razor sharp, not a hint of the blood from his earlier encounter visible. Only the faint tension in his jaw betrayed any hint of his recent violence. Marcus cleared his throat. "Confirmed. Zara Mitchell, 28. Corporate forensic accountant, currently, or formerly, in WITSEC. Federal file checks out completely." He turned the laptop, showing her official documentation. Dante's gray eyes locked onto her, cold, calculating. She met his gaze without flinching, a small act of defiance that seemed to intrigue him. "Tell me about the rooftop," he demanded, pulling a chair closer but not sitting, always moving, always strategic. Zara took a deep breath. "Random chance. Pure survival." She explained how the safe house explosion had forced her into a desperate escape across Chicago's rooftops. "Your building was just there. I needed height, needed to get away from whoever was hunting me." Lorenzo shifted, hand instinctively moving toward the weapon at his side. Dante's slight hand gesture stopped him. "You crashed through my private rooftop garden," Dante said. It wasn't a question. "Most people would be dead from that fall. You survived." Most people don't have survival as their only option, Zara responded quietly. Something flickered in Dante's eyes. Respect? Recognition? She couldn't quite read him. He moved closer, checking the cuts on her forehead from the glass ceiling crash. His touch was clinical, professional, but she felt the electricity of proximity. Up close, she could see the intricate details, the faint scar above his right eyebrow, the expensive watch that likely cost more than her entire wardrobe, the barely contained violence in his stance. He saw her too, the defiance in her eyes, the intelligence analyzing every movement, the way she assessed her situation like a chess player calculating her next move. You discovered financial irregularities at your firm, Dante stated. Laundering money for the Bratva. Why didn't you just walk away? Zara's laugh was bitter. Walking away isn't an option when you know too much. My father taught me that justice requires action, not silence. Dante's hand was still near her face, close enough to feel his body heat, close enough that one movement could be tenderness or violence. And now, he asked. Now I survive, she answered. The silence stretched between them. Charged, dangerous, potential energy waiting to transform. Finally, Dante stepped back. Lorenzo cut her restraints. Her wrists were freed, blood rushing back into her fingers. But freedom was an illusion. You're not leaving, Dante continued, but you're no longer a prisoner. Consider this a comfortable holding. He walked to the door, then paused. Welcome to my world, Ms. Mitchell. When he turned, their eyes met. A promise, a threat, the beginning of something neither of them could yet understand. Outside the room, Chicago continued its relentless rhythm, unaware that everything was about to change. The guard's heavy footsteps echoed through polished marble corridors as Dante guided Zara toward her new gilded prison. She walked with deliberate stillness, her body coiled tight with suppressed tension. Every muscle screamed to fight, to run, but survival required strategy. The luxury guest wing gleamed with expensive neutrals and sleek surfaces, a cage designed to look like a 5-star hotel suite. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Chicago's skyline, but Zara knew they were reinforced bulletproof glass. No escape. Showers through there, Dante said, pointing. His voice carried the same controlled intensity she'd noticed during their initial confrontation. Fresh clothes are in the walk-in. Everything you need is provided. She studied him, reading the dangerous calm beneath his tailored suit. Blood still faintly stained his knuckles from earlier, a reminder of the violence he'd just unleashed. Their eyes locked, a silent battle of wills. Zara broke first. I need medical supplies. For these cuts. Dante's gaze swept her body, noting the shallow wounds from her rooftop escape. A minimal nod, and he opened a medical kit from a hidden cabinet. Professional? Detached. But something dangerous simmered underneath. After he left, Zara methodically assessed her environment. 2 exits, main door and bathroom, windows, reinforced, no visible locks, security cameras in every corner, electronic keypads on doors, professional-grade imprisonment. The shower felt like heaven after hours of terror. Designer soap, impossibly soft towels, everything pristine and controlled. She found a complete wardrobe waiting, all her exact size, tags still attached. Designer labels, expensive, a gilded trap. Her mind raced, mapping potential strategies. She was alive. That meant something. The FBI thought she was dead. The Bratva wanted her dead. And Dante Cavalletti, the most dangerous man in Chicago, wanted something else. In his office, Dante listened grimly to Vincent's report. $5 million bounty, corrupt federal agents hunting her, security footage everywhere showing her entering our building. Lorenzo added, releasing her means certain death. Killing her wastes critical intelligence. Marco, usually Dante's most trusted lieutenant, looked unusually nervous. His fingers tapped an irregular rhythm against his leg, a tell Dante had noticed years ago. She knows too much about Bratva operations, Vincent continued. Keeping her violates every neutrality agreement between families. Dante's gray eyes remained cold, calculating. He pulled up security feed from the guest wing, watching Zara explore her new environment. She moved like a predator, testing boundaries, measuring escape routes, analyzing every detail. Interesting. An hour later, he entered her room carrying dinner. Zara stood by the window, back straight, watching him approach. No fear, just assessment. You have 2 choices, Dante said without preamble. Cooperate and live comfortably. Resist and experience consequences. She raised an eyebrow. Consequences? This isn't a negotiation. You're my guest, indefinitely. Your survival depends entirely on my protection. Zara processed this. A corporate accountant used to controlled environments. She recognized power dynamics instantly. This wasn't imprisonment. This was strategic containment. And if I refuse? Dante's smile didn't reach his eyes. You won't! He placed dinner on the table, perfectly prepared Italian cuisine, expensive wine, every detail calculated to demonstrate both threat and potential comfort. You entered my world uninvited, bellezza nera, he said softly. Now you live or die by my rules. Something shifted between them. Not attraction, not yet, but a dangerous recognition. Two intelligent predators, suddenly trapped in the same space, each understanding the other's capacity for survival. Zara realized something profound in that moment. She'd traded one prison for another, but this prison might offer a path to survival and potentially revenge. I'll need a laptop, she said coolly, and access to financial databases. Dante's smile was razor sharp. We'll discuss that tomorrow. As he turned to leave, Zara knew everything had changed. Her world was no longer about escape. It was about adaptation. And in Dante Cavalletti's dangerous empire, only the most adaptable would survive. The morning light sliced through bulletproof windows, casting geometric shadows across polished marble floors. Zara Mitchell stretched against silk sheets, momentarily disoriented by luxury that felt more like a gilded cage than a bedroom. Her muscles ached from yesterday's rooftop escape and subsequent capture by Dante Cavalletti. The room was a study in controlled opulence, cream and charcoal tones, designer furniture that probably cost more than her entire year's salary. A wall of technology monitored every inch of the space, sleek black screens reflecting her movements. She was a bird in the most expensive birdcage Chicago had ever constructed. Heavy footsteps approached. Dante entered carrying a silver breakfast tray, his expensive charcoal suit immaculate despite the violence of the previous night. Blood no longer stained his knuckles, but she could see the faint remnants of dried crimson near his cufflink. Eat, he commanded, setting down a spread that looked like it belonged in a five-star restaurant. Fresh croissants, exotic fruit, a delicate French press coffee. Zara raised an eyebrow. Is this how you treat all your kidnapping victims? His laugh was sharp, more a bark than genuine humor. You're not a typical victim, Ms. Mitchell. She noticed the details, the way he positioned himself near the door, always ready to move, always calculating. His gray eyes missed nothing. A predator at rest, but never truly relaxed. I want to understand the terms of my accommodation, she said, selecting a strawberry. Dante outlined her boundaries with clinical precision. The guest wing was her world now, a library with encrypted internet, a professional-grade gym, entertainment systems. Always monitored, always controlled. You have more comfort here than most people's luxury apartments, he said. Consider it protective custody. Protective? The word dripped with sarcasm. You mean imprisonment? Their verbal sparring continued through breakfast. She challenged every statement, refusing to be passive. For each hard line he drew, she pushed back with intellectual precision. Her forensic accounting background meant she understood power structures, negotiations. By afternoon, the first Bratva attack transformed everything. Security monitors suddenly lit up. 3 Russian soldiers attempted building penetration, professional mercenaries with military-grade weapons. Zara watched, transfixed, as Dante transformed from businessman to predator. His movement was liquid violence, no wasted motion. He dispatched the first attacker with a knife thrust so quick it seemed to materialize from nowhere. The second fell from a precise gunshot that shattered his skull. The third, he kept alive momentarily, pressing him against a wall, extracting information with surgical interrogation techniques that made Zara's stomach clench. When he finally executed the last soldier, his shirt remained pristine, cold, efficient. That evening, she confronted him. You murdered them without hesitation. Dante didn't apologize. They came to kill me, to kill you. In my world, that means death. His phone rang, a video call. Suddenly, the killer dissolved into something unexpected. Pure, gentle, brotherly love. His youngest sister, sobbing about a boarding school panic attack. His voice transformed, soft and soothing, walking her through breathing exercises. Zara watched, stunned. The monster had unexpectedly revealed his heart. Who are you? She whispered. Dante's gaze met hers. Not a killer, not a protector. Something infinitely more complex. I'm the man keeping you alive, he answered. Whether you like it or not. The morning light filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Dante's private library, casting a soft glow on rows of leather-bound first editions. Zara wandered the space, fingers trailing along spines of books that looked more like museum pieces than reading material. Her bare feet made no sound on the polished hardwood, a habit born from years of learning to move quietly and survive. Dante sat in a high-backed leather chair, a first edition of Hemingway's For Whom the Bell Tolls, open in his hands. His gray eyes flickered up, tracking her movement without breaking his concentration. She noticed the way his fingers gripped the book, strong hands marked by a network of pale scars that told stories of violence. "You're not what I expected," he said without looking up, turning a page. The Italian accent underneath his perfect English curled around the words like smoke. Zara lifted an eyebrow. "And what exactly did you expect?" His lips twitched, not quite a smile, but something close. "Not someone who looks like she belongs in a museum of rare books as much as I do." On the wall beside him, framed and carefully preserved, she noticed a collection of handwritten recipe cards. They were yellowed with age, elegant script dancing across each one. Her curiosity overcame her caution. "Your grandmother's recipes?" Dante's entire demeanor shifted. The hardness in his eyes softened for just a moment. "Maria Cavalletti. She taught me more about power than any of my military or criminal mentors. A woman who could make men bow with a single look, or a perfectly seasoned ragu." When he reached for another book, the light caught the scars on his hands. Each one was a story, pale against his olive skin. Zara couldn't help herself. "Those aren't kitchen accidents." He studied her, weighing how much to reveal. "Each one is a lesson. This one," he pointed to a jagged mark across his left knuckles. "From my first real battle with the Bratva. I was 23. They killed my mentor, thought I'd be easy to intimidate." "Were you?" The question slipped out before she could stop herself. A dark chuckle escaped him. Does this look like the hand of someone easily intimidated? She thought of her own father, a civil rights attorney who never backed down, even when it cost him everything. "No," she said quietly. "It looks like the hand of someone who understands that some fights choose you, not the other way around." Something shifted between them. Not friendship, not yet, but a recognition. Two survivors who understood that the world wasn't kind, and kindness was a luxury rarely afforded to those who lived on its razor's edge. Later that afternoon, in Dante's home office, Zara spread financial documents across the massive mahogany desk. Her fingers traced complex money trails, highlighting vulnerabilities in his organization's financial structure. "Here," she said, tapping a series of transactions. "The Bratva could exploit this offshore account. Your current encryption is good, but not impenetrable." Dante leaned closer, watching her work. Most men would have been threatened by her expertise. He looked fascinated. "You're good," he said. Not a compliment, an assessment. When evening came, he presented her with designer clothing, replacement for the torn outfit she'd arrived in. But Zara had other plans. She appeared at dinner wearing his own crisp white dress shirt, sleeves rolled up, the fabric hanging to her knees. "The only thing in this penthouse not bought with blood money," she said, meeting his gaze directly. For a moment, pure rage and something darker, something almost like desire, flickered in Dante's eyes. Then he laughed. A real laugh, unexpected and rich. "You," he said, "are something else entirely." Later, they sat across from each other at an antique chessboard. Each move was a negotiation, a dance of intellectual warfare. Outside, Chicago's night stretched before them, a city that had no idea how its power structures were being silently redesigned in this very room. Dante moved a knight. Zara countered with her bishop. The game was just beginning. The gym smelled like leather and iron, a masculine space that seemed to pulse with contained energy. Dante watched Zara adjust her stance, her fingers wrapped awkwardly around the grip of the Glock 19 he'd handed her. "Feet shoulder-width apart," he instructed, his voice low and precise. "Not like you're balancing on a tightrope." She glared at him, a spark of defiance lighting her dark eyes. 4 days of captivity hadn't broken her spirit. If anything, it had sharpened her edges. "You want me to learn, then actually teach me." He stepped closer, adjusting her shoulders with firm hands. The contact sent an unexpected electricity between them, something they both pretended not to notice. His fingers traced her stance, positioning her arms, the touch deliberately clinical, even as something charged simmered beneath. "Control is about more than just holding the weapon," Dante murmured. It's about understanding the weapon's relationship to your body. Zara's breath caught as he pressed against her back, guiding her arms. His body was solid muscle, radiating heat and danger. She could feel the contained power in his frame, the killer's precision in every movement. He demonstrated the proper grip, his hands covering hers. Dominant hand here, support hand here. Feel the weight, understand its balance. Her first few shots went wide, punching ragged holes in the target. Frustration flickered across her face. Dante didn't mock her. Instead, he made minute corrections, patient in a way that surprised them both. By the afternoon's third hour, she was grouping shots closer to the center mass. Sweat beaded on her forehead, her shirt clinging to her body. Dante watched, something primal stirring beneath his controlled exterior. Again, he said. When training concluded, he surprised her by tending a small cut on his hand, a remnant from that morning's business. She recognized the euphemism. Cleaning the wound, her touch surprisingly gentle, their eyes met. "Your hand okay?" she asked. "It's nothing," he responded, but didn't pull away. That evening, they shared wine, an expensive Barolo that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. The intimacy felt surreal. A Mafia boss and a federal witness sharing a moment of unexpected connection. "Tell me about your siblings," Zara requested. Dante hesitated, then something softened in his expression. He spoke of raising 4 children after his father's murder, becoming a parent at 17, working multiple jobs while building his criminal empire, ensuring his siblings got educations, stayed safe. "I wasn't going to let them suffer," he said quietly. "Not after what happened to our father." Vincent's interruption shattered the moment. He entered with encrypted intelligence reports, his face grim. Dante's expression shifted, the tender vulnerability vanishing, replaced by the cold calculation of a predator. The encrypted message that arrived moments later made Dante's blood run cold. His fingers tightened around the phone, knuckles going white. But when he looked up at Zara, his face revealed nothing. Just another day in their dangerous dance. Something was coming, something that would change everything. The first rays of dawn sliced through Dante Cavalletti's office like razor blades, casting harsh shadows across the expensive Persian rug, now littered with shattered glass and splintered wood. He hadn't slept, hadn't stopped moving. His cell phone sat crushed against the wall, a casualty of his earlier rage. Vincent's footsteps were deliberate, measured, the kind of careful approach a man takes when delivering news that could ignite a powder keg. "Confirmed," he said quietly. Sophia was taken from her boarding school in Lausanne 12 hours ago. The name hung in the air like smoke. Sophia, his baby sister, 16 years old, the most innocent of them all. Dante's hands, still wrapped in the bloodied knuckle wraps from his earlier interrogation, clenched into fists hard enough that his platinum ring cut into his skin. "Details." Vincent slid a manila folder across the desk. Inside, a ransom demand printed on expensive paper. Cold, professional, the Bratva's trademark. 72 hours to deliver Zara Mitchell alive or Sophia dies. Something inside Dante shattered. Not metaphorically, literally. Crystal sculptures from Venice, rare first edition art books, custom Italian furniture worth more than most people's annual salaries, all became projectiles. Each object represented years of calculated control, now destroyed in seconds of pure, unfiltered rage. The sound was apocalyptic. Glass exploding, wood splintering, decades of carefully constructed power disintegrating into chaos. Zara heard the destruction from the secured wing of the penthouse. Her forensic accountant's mind immediately calculated the financial damage, millions vanishing in moments. But her heart recognized something deeper. This wasn't just rage. This was a brother's terror. She found him amid the wreckage. Dante Cavalletti, the ghost of Chicago, legendary Mafia boss. Now just a man drowning in fear. "Tell me about Sophia," Zara said softly. For a moment, she thought he might kill her. His eyes, gray like winter storms, could slice through steel. But something broke. Something human. "She was 5 when our father died," Dante said, his voice rough. "Gets nightmares. Still, wakes up thinking someone's coming to hurt our family." A pause. "She loves ballet, wants to study in Paris, hasn't killed a man, hasn't had to." The vulnerability was shocking. This was not the monster Chicago feared. This was a brother. Zara stepped forward. "I can help you get her back. You're the reason she was taken. I'm also the best chance of finding her alive." Their standoff was electric. 2 survivors, one from the corporate world, one from the criminal underworld. both understanding that survival sometimes means making impossible choices. Zara pulled out her laptop, financial records, transaction logs, the kind of digital breadcrumbs most people couldn't decode. The Bratva doesn't just take, they calculate. Every move has a financial trail. Dante watched, something shifting in his expression. Not quite trust, something more complicated. Outside, his soldiers prepared for war, weapons being checked, encrypted communications humming, the kind of preparation that would make entire criminal networks tremble. 72 hours, a countdown to either salvation or destruction. Zara understood the stakes instantly. She was the catalyst, the unexpected variable that could destroy everything, or save a 16-year-old girl who loved ballet and still had nightmares about losing her family. "I'll turn myself in," she said quietly, "to save Sophia." Dante's response was instantaneous and violent. "No!" One word, spoken with such absolute finality that the entire room seemed to freeze. The war had begun, and nothing, absolutely nothing, would stand in Dante Cavalletti's way of getting his sister back. The digital clock on Dante's bedside table read 11:47 p.m. when he guided Zara into his personal master suite. Her fingers brushed against the expensive silk wallpaper, her body tense with exhaustion and unresolved tension. "I'm not sleeping in your bed," she said firmly. Dante's laugh was sharp, without humor. "You're not sleeping anywhere else. This is the most secure space in the building." His suite was a fortress disguised as luxury. Bulletproof windows, multiple security cameras, reinforced walls with hidden weapon compartments. Every surface screamed both wealth and preparedness. "I'll take the couch," he announced, already pulling out tactical gear from a hidden compartment. 3 weapons materialized on the side table: a Glock, a custom Sig Sauer, and a tactical knife with a carbon fiber handle. Zara raised an eyebrow. "Comfortable sleeping arrangement." "In my world, comfort means staying alive." She understood that better than most now. After her safe house explosion, after witnessing the brutal efficiency with which Dante eliminated threats, survival wasn't a concept. It was a breathing reality. He gave her a set of silk pajamas, Italian-made, likely worth more than her entire wardrobe. When she emerged from the bathroom, the fabric pooling around her darker skin, Dante's gaze lingered. Not with desire, with assessment, calculating potential vulnerabilities. "We should work," she said, spreading financial documents across the massive mahogany desk. Her fingers traced complex money trails, revealing Bratva property holdings. Dante watched, impressed. Most people saw numbers. She saw stories, connections, potential weaknesses. By 2 a.m., empty espresso cups surrounded them. Zara's hair had escaped its tight braid, wild curls framing her face. Dante realized he'd never seen her completely unguarded before. "We're missing something," she muttered. "These property records. There's a pattern I can't quite." A sudden movement. Dante was instantly alert, weapon in hand before she could blink. But it was just the wind against the window. False alarm. "Your sister," Zara said softly. "Tell me about her." Something softened in Dante's eyes. "Sophia is everything. Brilliant. Fierce. Too young to understand the world we live in, but strong enough to survive it." At 3 a.m., exhaustion made them vulnerable. Professional walls crumbled. "I'm terrified for her," Zara admitted, her voice cracked. "Kidnapped children. I've seen what happens." Dante's hand, the same hand that had killed men without hesitation, gently covered hers. "I will burn this entire city to get her back. Every single person involved will suffer." Their eyes met. Not a threat, a promise. By dawn, they'd identified 3 potential Bratva holding locations, promising leads but nothing concrete. Dante's secure phone buzzed constantly, reports of increased criminal movement across Chicago. Lorenzo's message came through first. "Increased Bratva activity in Wicker Park. Suggest using Mitchell as bait to draw them out." Dante's reaction was instantaneous and violent. He crushed the phone in his bare hand, eyes burning with a rage that made Zara instinctively step back. "Never," he snarled. "She doesn't become bait, not for anyone." The raw protectiveness surprised them both. Vincent's follow-up message complicated everything. "FBI mobilizing. They're tracking our movements. Something's happening." 48 hours remained to find Sophia. The clock was ticking, and now they had more than the Bratva to worry about. Zara looked at Dante. He looked back. No words were necessary. The hunt was just beginning. The knife wound glistened deep red against Dante's olive skin, a jagged slice tracing his ribcage where the Bratva soldier's blade had found its mark. Blood seeped through his torn dress shirt, dark and viscous, telling the story of the ambush that had nearly claimed another of his men. Zara's hands trembled slightly as she laid out medical supplies on the pristine white towel. Her fingers, usually steady when tracing financial spreadsheets, now hesitated over the antiseptic and silk sutures. Dante watched her, his steel-gray eyes never leaving her face. "I can do this myself," he said, his voice a low rumble that didn't invite argument. She met his gaze. "Like hell you will." The bathroom was a study in controlled luxury, marble surfaces, gleaming chrome fixtures, and now the raw violence of Dante's injury disrupting its perfection. He sat on the edge of the countertop, muscles tensed, allowing her closer than he'd permit anyone else. Her touch was clinical at first. Zara cleaned the wound with practiced efficiency, years of corporate training translating unexpectedly into emergency medical skills. Each swipe of the antiseptic made him flinch, not from pain, but from the intimate invasion of his personal space. "This needs stitches," she murmured. "No doctors," Dante growled. "No traces." She understood. In his world, medical records could become weapons, vulnerabilities to be exploited. So she threaded the silk suture, her fingers surprisingly gentle as she began closing the wound. Their proximity was electric. She stood between his spread legs, her body inches from his, the scent of her lavender shampoo mixing with the metallic tang of blood. Dante's hands gripped her waist, ostensibly for balance, but something more primal hummed beneath the touch. "You're good at this," he said quietly. Zara's laugh was sharp. "Survival skill. Not everyone has private medical teams on speed dial." Her fingers continued their delicate work, closing the wound with precision. Each stitch brought her closer, her breath warm against his skin. Dante watched her, seeing beyond the forensic accountant who'd stumbled into his world, seeing the warrior beneath. When the last suture was tied, she didn't immediately step back. Her hands remained on his skin, fingertips tracing the map of old scars beneath fresh wounds. Bullet marks, knife tracks, the cartography of a life spent dancing with death. "Does it hurt?" she whispered. His response came not in words, but in movement. One hand cupped her neck, fingers threading into her hair. The kiss was neither gentle nor restrained. It was a collision of months of tension, of danger and desire, compressed into a single moment. Zara met him with equal intensity. Her hands, still stained with his blood, gripped his shoulders. She tasted copper and defiance, the line between professional and personal, obliterated in an instant. Dante pressed her against the bathroom wall, lifting her effortlessly. Her legs wrapped around his waist, the injured ribs forgotten in the rush of contact. His mouth found the sensitive curve of her neck, a growl rising from deep in his chest. "Dante!" she started, but the words dissolved into a gasp. The phone rang. Reality crashed back with Sophia's name flashing on the screen. Dante went absolutely still, then slowly lowered Zara, breaking contact with a physical effort that seemed to pain him more than the knife wound. One touch, one moment of vulnerability. The moment passed. "Sophia?" Zara asked, her voice remarkably steady. Dante's eyes, moments ago, molten with desire, were now chips of tactical ice. "We have a location." 36 hours remained to save his sister, and everything, their tentative connection, their building desire, would have to wait. The sky bled crimson as dawn cracked open Chicago's steel and glass horizon. Dante stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, his reflection a ghost against the cityscape. Sharp suit, hands clasped behind his back, every muscle coiled with predatory tension. Zara sat at the conference table, her fingers dancing across a holographic financial map. The kiss from last night hung between them like a live wire, charged, dangerous, unresolved. Neither mentioned it. Mission first. "These payment streams," she said, her voice professional, "show 3 distinct security companies contracted by the Bratva for the warehouse district. But look here, see how the routing numbers cascade? This isn't standard logistics, it's a shell game." Dante moved closer, his body radiating heat. Not touching her, not after last night. His fingers brushed the holographic projection, tracing the financial threads she'd uncovered. "You're good," he murmured. A compliment, maybe more. Her skin prickled. Professional, they had to stay professional. "Good enough to save your sister," Zara responded, refusing to let the moment become something more. Vincent entered, a manila folder in hand. "Tactical teams are prepped. Armored convoy ready in 30 minutes. His eyes flickered between Dante and Zara, catching the electric current humming beneath their professional facade. Dante nodded. Zara rides with me, in the bulletproof SUV. She verifies intelligence in real time. No, Zara interrupted. I want to be useful, not just a passenger. A ghost of a smile crossed Dante's face. You'll be more useful alive. The preparation was military precise. Each member of Dante's team moved with choreographed efficiency, weapons checked, communications synced, escape routes mapped. Zara watched, fascinated by the lethal ballet of organized violence. When it was time to leave, Dante approached her with a matte black handgun. Know how to use this? She raised an eyebrow. I'm a forensic accountant, not a helpless princess. His fingers wrapped around hers, showing her the safety mechanism. The touch was electric, momentary, professional. The convoy moved through Chicago's streets like a dark river. 6 identical black SUVs, tinted windows concealing tactical teams. Dante's vehicle led, Zara beside him, a map of the warehouse district spread between them. The Bratva won't expect a direct approach, Dante said, his voice low. They'll anticipate manipulation, misdirection. We're going straight through their defenses. Zara studied the map. Psychological warfare. You're not just rescuing Sofia, you're sending a message. Every action is a message in our world, Murbeleza. Night fell quickly. Chicago's industrial edges became a labyrinth of shadows and steel. Warehouses loomed like concrete monsters, each potentially hiding Sofia. Dante's hand rested near his holster. Not nervous, calculating. When this is over, Zara said quietly, what happens to me? He didn't pretend not to understand the question. You'll be safe. With me. Not a promise, a statement of fact. The lead SUV stopped. Warehouse district. Quiet. Too quiet. Dante checked his watch. 24 hours remaining to rescue Sofia. Stay here, he instructed Zara. Maintain communication, monitor financial channels. She wanted to argue, wanted to follow. But she understood the strategy. Her weapon was information. His was violence. He stepped out of the SUV, perfectly pressed suit, seemingly untouched by the grime surrounding him. A predator, entering enemy territory. Zara watched through bulletproof glass, her hand unconsciously touching the gun Dante had given her. Waiting. Watching. The night holding its breath. The rescue was about to begin. The warehouse erupted in gunfire, muzzle flashes cutting through the industrial darkness like razor-sharp lightning. From inside the armored car, Zara watched Dante transform. No longer the sophisticated businessman in a tailored suit, but a predator unleashed. His movement was liquid violence, each shot precise, each step calculated. 7 Bratva soldiers fell before most could even raise their weapons, their bodies crumpling like discarded puppets. Blood spattered across concrete, steam rising from fresh corpses in the cold Chicago air. The Bratva lieutenant, a broad-shouldered man with Cyrillic tattoos crawling up his neck, tried dragging himself behind a shipping container. Dante followed, his footsteps methodical, hunter tracking wounded prey. Where is my sister? The question came out soft, which somehow made it more terrifying. The lieutenant spat blood. Go to hell, Cavaletti! Dante's laugh was pure steel. I've been there. Now I'm bringing a piece of it back with me. Zara couldn't look away. She'd seen violence before, but never like this. Never this surgical, this cold. Dante moved through the warehouse, like death itself. Each motion deliberate, each moment calculated to maximize pain and extract information. When the lieutenant still refused to talk, Dante's methods became something beyond interrogation. Something primal. Something that made Zara understand why even hardened criminals whispered his name in fear. 20 minutes later, he had the location. Sofia was in a hidden room, drugged but alive. Dante carried his sister out, her body small and fragile against his broad frame. His men were already dousing the warehouse in accelerant, preparing to burn away evidence. The lieutenant's broken body remained inside, a message to anyone who might consider crossing the Cavaletti family. In the car, Sofia drifted in and out of consciousness. Her hands clutched Dante's shirt, her breathing shallow. Zara watched the raw tenderness replace the monster she'd witnessed moments before. This was a brother, not a killer. A protector, not a weapon. She needs medical attention, Zara said quietly. Dante's eyes met hers in the rearview mirror. Still dangerous, still calculating, but something else flickered there. Something that looked like gratitude. At the penthouse, Zara helped Dante get Sofia settled. She'd worked with trauma victims before, understood the delicate choreography of care. Clean clothes, soft blankets, water within reach, whispered reassurances. Sophia's eyes, when they briefly opened, locked onto Zara, not with fear, but with a recognition that transcended words. Another survivor, another woman who understood what it meant to be prey, then transform into something unbreakable. Later that night, after doctors had come and gone, after Sophia was safely sleeping, Dante sat alone in the dark. His hands, those instruments of surgical violence, trembled slightly. Blood still crusted under his fingernails. Rage and fear mingled in his posture, a vulnerability he'd never show another living soul. Zara watched from the doorway, understanding now the complexity of the man before her. Not just a monster, not just a protector. Something infinitely more dangerous, a human being capable of both ultimate violence and profound love. Their eyes met. No words were necessary. In that moment, everything changed. Here's the raw text for Chapter 13. The digital clock read 12:47 a.m. when Zara found him. Dante sat in absolute darkness, a half-empty bottle of Macallan scotch beside him, his hands trembling almost imperceptibly. The penthouse was silent except for the soft whirring of security systems and distant Chicago traffic. She'd learned to move quietly during her weeks in captivity, a skill that now let her observe him unnoticed. Dante Cavalletti, the ghost of Chicago, the most feared mafia boss in the Midwest, looked nothing like the ruthless killer who had dismantled 7 armed Bratva soldiers just hours earlier. Now he looked broken. His expensive suit jacket was draped over his leather chair, his white shirt unbuttoned at the collar, stained with dried blood that wasn't his own. The hands that had killed so efficiently now shook with an emotion Zara hadn't expected to see: vulnerability. "I told you to stay in the bedroom," he said without turning, knowing she was there. Zara didn't apologize. She'd stopped apologizing to dangerous men a long time ago. Instead, she walked closer, her bare feet silent on the hardwood floor. Up close, she could see the toll of the night's violence, the slight bruise forming on his jaw, the cut above his eyebrow, the tremor in his hands that spoke of something deeper than physical exhaustion. "You saved her," Zara said softly. A statement, not a question. Dante finally looked up. His gray eyes, usually cold as steel, were haunted. "I almost didn't." The admission hung between them, a rare moment of genuine emotion from a man who typically communicated through violence and strategic silence. Zara understood then that Sophia wasn't just his sister. She was the last pure thing in a world Dante had built with blood and calculated brutality. "She's safe," Zara said. "Because of you." He laughed, but it was a harsh sound without humor. "Safe? She was kidnapped because of me, because of this life I've built, because enemies see her as a weapon to hurt me." Zara took another step. Her hand, the one he'd taught to hold a weapon, to understand strategy, reached out and touched his wrist. The contact stopped his trembling. "Look at me," she commanded. Surprising them both, he did. "You rescued her. You destroyed everyone who touched her. That's what matters." The air between them changed, charged, dangerous. Dante's hand turned, capturing her wrist, with the same grip he'd used to break an enemy's bones. But now, pressed against her skin, it felt like something else entirely. "You saw what I am tonight," he said, his voice rough. "The monster, the killer." "I saw a brother who would burn the world to protect his family," Zara corrected. Something wild and desperate broke inside him. He pulled her closer, his grip no longer just holding her wrist, but claiming her entirely. One moment they were inches apart, the next, pure combustion. The kiss was nothing like their previous encounters. This wasn't strategy or tension. This was survival. Raw, primal, a claiming that went beyond physical desire and entered the realm of something almost spiritual. Dante lifted her, pressing her against his massive mahogany desk, scattering papers and electronics. His hands were everywhere, removing her clothing with the same precision he used to dismantle enemies. Her hands matched his intensity, fingers tracing the scars that mapped his torso, each one a story of survival. When he entered her, it was with a possessiveness that said she was his now, completely, irrevocably. "Mine," he growled against her throat. "Yours," she responded without hesitation. They moved together, two survivors who understood that love in their world wasn't soft. It was a weapon, a shield, a declaration of war against everything that would dare threaten them. As dawn's first light crept across the Chicago skyline, they lay entangled. Sophia was safe down the hall. The Bratva had been reminded of the cost of challenging Dante Cavalletti, and something fundamental had shifted between Zara and Dante. They both knew nothing would ever be the same. Soft morning light filtered through heavy charcoal silk curtains, casting shadows across Dante's expansive bedroom. Zara stirred, her body sore from last night's passionate aftermath, feeling the solid weight of Dante's arm locked possessively around her waist. His breath was steady against her neck, a predator momentarily at rest. A soft knock interrupted the quiet. "Dante." Sophia's voice trembled slightly through the door. In an instant, Dante transformed. The lethal edge vanished, replaced by a gentleness Zara hadn't yet witnessed. "Come in, Piccola," he called, his voice low and soothing. Sophia entered, her teenage frame wrapped in an oversized sweater, looking smaller and more vulnerable than her 16 years. Dark circles under her eyes betrayed her recent trauma. Without hesitation, Dante lifted the blanket, inviting her into the bed's sanctuary. Zara watched, fascinated, as Dante pulled his sister close. His tattooed arm, covered in intricate designs that told stories of violence and survival, now wrapped Sophia in pure protection. "Breathe with me," he murmured in Italian, "just like we practiced." She followed his breathing rhythm, her rapid breaths gradually slowing. Dante's fingers traced calming patterns on her back, a ritual clearly practiced through years of helping her manage. Panic! "You're safe," he repeated. "I'm here." Zara saw then the true complexity of Dante Cavalletti, not just a monster, but a guardian who would burn entire worlds to keep his family safe. After Sophia calmed, Dante sent her to shower and change. When she left, he turned to Zara, his gray eyes intense. "We don't discuss what happens in this room outside these walls." It wasn't a request, it was a command. Breakfast transformed the penthouse's clinical luxury into something warmer. Sophia sat beside Zara, asking about her forensic accounting work with a curiosity that seemed to momentarily lift her recent darkness. Dante watched them, something close to a smile playing at his lips. "Your brother taught me that numbers always tell a story," Zara told Sophia. "Just like crime scene, evidence, or financial records, everything leaves a trace." Sophia's laugh was sharp and unexpected. Sounds like something Dante would say. The moment fractured when Dante's secure phone buzzed. His expression hardened, the gentle protector instantly replaced by a calculated predator. "The Bratva hit 3 of our legitimate shipping companies in retaliation for the warehouse massacre." Zara understood immediately. "They're testing your response, trying to determine your vulnerabilities." Dante's eyebrow raised, impressed. "Exactly. Which means I need you where I can see you." "I'm coming with you," she stated. Not asked. Stated. His laugh was dark, almost dangerous. "My office it is." The downtown high-rise housing Cavalletti Enterprises looked like any other corporate headquarters. Marble floors, glass walls, expensive art. But Zara recognized the subtle security, reinforced glass, strategic sightlines, multiple exit routes. Watching Dante work was like observing a performance. One moment, he was the charming CEO discussing international shipping logistics. The next, he was a stone-cold strategist, dispatching orders that would dismantle entire criminal networks. "Transfer funds here," he told Vincent, his consigliere. "Make it look like standard maritime insurance adjustments." To anyone else, it would seem like routine business. To Zara, it was financial warfare. By evening, 3 more of Dante's siblings had arrived, each unique, but sharing the same intense gray eyes. They gathered for dinner, a ritual that seemed part strategy session, part family reunion. Marco, the oldest after Dante, discussed international investments. Lucia, studying law, argued about potential legal complications. The youngest, Antonio, mostly ate and listened. Through it all, Dante remained the axis they all orbited. Later, alone in his bedroom, the day's armor fell away. Zara watched as Dante removed his shoulder holster, revealing scars that mapped a lifetime of violence. When he turned, vulnerability flickered briefly in his eyes. "My father always said, a man protects what matters," he said quietly. "Everything I've done, every body, every deal, every sacrifice, was to keep them safe." Zara understood then that love, for Dante, wasn't soft. It was a weapon, a shield, a promise written in blood. She touched his scarred chest. "You're more than the violence, Dante." His response was a kiss that promised both protection and possession, a perfect reflection of the man himself. The morning sunlight filtered through the penthouse's floor-to-ceiling windows, casting a warm glow across the marble kitchen. Dante stood behind Zara, his large hands gently guiding her fingers as he taught her Italian. "Ripeti dopo di me," he murmured, his breath warm against her neck. "Buongiorno, amore mio." Zara laughed, the sound breaking through the tension that had defined their relationship just days ago. Buongiorno, amore mio, she repeated, her pronunciation rough but determined. The wooden spoon in her hand continued stirring the roux for her grandmother's jambalaya, a recipe she was determined to share. Not bad, Dante said, a rare smile softening the hard lines of his face. His fingers lingered on her waist, tracing the curve where her tank top met her jeans. The intimacy between them had grown unexpected and intense, a connection forged through survival, strategy, and something deeper neither wanted to name. She turned, catching him off guard, and pressed a wooden spoon covered in sauce against his lips. Taste, she commanded. This is real cooking, not whatever fancy chef you've got on staff. Dante's eyes darkened as he licked the sauce from the spoon, holding her gaze. The moment charged with something more than just culinary critique. He stepped closer, crowding her against the kitchen counter. Delicioso, he whispered, and then he was kissing her, hard and possessive, sauce and spice mixing between them. The passionate moment shattered when Dante's phone buzzed. He pulled back, checking the screen. His expression hardened. The killer returning, momentarily eclipsing the man who had been teaching her Italian and laughing in the kitchen. Vincent found something, he said, sliding his finger across the screen. The FBI is moving. They're using your disappearance as leverage to investigate my operations. Zara's hands didn't shake. She'd learned that weakness was a luxury she couldn't afford. What do we do? My siblings need to return to their schools. It's not safe here. The protective edge in his voice was unmistakable. This was the Dante who had burned entire warehouses to rescue his sister, who would destroy worlds to keep his family safe. Later that afternoon, Zara worked with intense concentration, her fingers flying across Dante's secure computer system. She was redesigning his money laundering detection algorithms, finding vulnerabilities he hadn't noticed. Financial forensics was her weapon, as deadly in its precision as the guns that lined Dante's safe room. Impressive, Dante murmured, watching her work. He'd arranged an encrypted video call with her mother, ensuring she knew Zara was alive without revealing their dangerous circumstances. Sophia sat nearby, still recovering from her kidnapping. The teenager watched Zara with a mixture of admiration and relief. In Zara, she'd found something unexpected, a protector, a friend, someone who understood survival. As evening approached, the goodbyes became emotional. Sophia clung to Zara, her young face showing fear and reluctance to leave. Promise you'll be careful, the girl whispered. Dante watched the exchange, something vulnerable flickering in his eyes. When everyone had gone, when silence filled the penthouse, he found Zara in his library. His expensive suit was rumpled, his tie loose, a rare moment of unguarded vulnerability. You've become essential to me, he admitted, the words coming hard. And that terrifies me more than any enemy I've ever faced. Zara understood. In the world of Mafia politics, vulnerability was a death sentence. Yet here they were, two survivors who had found an unexpected connection in the midst of chaos. She crossed the room, took his face in her hands. We protect what's ours, she said simply. The words were a promise, a declaration of war, and a love letter all at once. Outside, Chicago's night descended. Inside the penthouse, Dante and Zara stood together, a queen and her dangerous king, preparing for the war that would soon consume them both. Chapter 16. Unexpected Vulnerability. The morning light filtered through charcoal gray curtains, casting soft shadows across Dante's bedroom. Zara watched him sleep, something she never thought she'd do. The most dangerous man in Chicago vulnerable, his guard completely down. His chest rose and fell with steady breaths. The brutal hands that could kill a man in seconds now relaxed, one arm draped protectively across her waist. She traced the line of scars mapping his torso, each one a story of survival. Her forensic mind cataloged them. Bullet wound on his left shoulder, knife scar along his ribs, a network of marks that told a history of violence. But her fingers also recognized the warmth of human skin, the soft vulnerability beneath the armor. You're thinking too loudly, Dante mumbled, his eyes still closed. Zara smiled. Occupational hazard of being a forensic accountant. I analyze everything. He opened one eye, a predatory gray that seemed to see straight through her. And what are you analyzing now? You, she said simply. How a man can be both monster and protector. Dante sat up, pulling her closer. The intimacy between them had shifted, no longer captor and captive, but something more complicated, something dangerous. He shared details of his past she never expected, how he'd raised his siblings after his father's murder, the years of building an empire from blood and vengeance. My father always said revenge is a river that never runs dry, Dante said, his fingers tracing her spine. But sometimes the river needs to be redirected. Marcus, his tech specialist, arrived mid-morning with critical intelligence. The corrupt FBI agents who'd been feeding information to the Bratva had been located. Dante's plan was surgical: eliminate them quietly without creating international incidents. Zara's moral compass spun. They should face legal consequences. They're law enforcement. Dante's laugh was cold. Law enforcement that got 2 U.S. Marshals murdered, that nearly got you killed. Their first real fight erupted, her commitment to systemic justice colliding with his world of immediate, brutal solutions. But underneath the argument burned something deeper: respect, understanding. That afternoon, Vincent reported something unusual. The Bratva was pulling back its Chicago operations, an unprecedented retreat. Dante's instincts flared. They never retreat without reason. Zara dove into their financial records, her fingers flying across encrypted databases. They're consolidating resources, she murmured. But for what? Her analysis revealed a complex financial migration, money being funneled, assets shifted. Something big was coming. Dante watched her work, fascinated by how her mind processed complex data like a weapon. As evening descended, the tension between them transformed. No longer adversaries, not quite lovers, but something electric and undefined. When Dante's hands touched her, it was with a tenderness that contradicted his reputation. Slow, reverent. Each caress a promise of protection. They made love with a desperate, quiet intensity. No words needed, just skin against skin, breath mingling, 2 broken people finding something close to healing in each other's arms. Afterward, while Zara slept, Dante made a decision that would change everything. From a hidden drawer in his dresser, he retrieved a small velvet box. Inside, a diamond ring, worth more than most people's annual salary. Black diamond, vintage setting, elegant, dangerous, just like her. He watched Zara sleep, this woman who had walked into his life like a hurricane, upending everything, challenging every rule he'd ever created. She wasn't just a witness or a potential threat anymore. She was becoming his partner, his equal. Outside, Chicago's night stretched across steel and concrete. The city that had always been his battlefield now felt different, like something could be built here, something beyond survival. Dante's fingers brushed Zara's hair. For the first time in his life, he was planning a future. Not just an empire, not just survival, a life. The morning sunlight spilled across the penthouse's marble floors, casting long shadows where Dante moved with predatory grace. His suit, impeccable as always, carried the faintest trace of gunpowder and expensive cologne. The engagement ring sat heavy in his inner pocket, platinum and a rare black diamond he'd sourced from a contact in Antwerp, waiting for the perfect moment to propose. Zara stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, her fingers dancing across multiple screens, restructuring financial networks with the same precision Dante used to dismantle his enemies. She wore one of his dress shirts, the white fabric falling to mid-thigh, her dark skin a stunning contrast against the silk. "You're making my financial team look like amateurs," Dante said, watching her work. She didn't look up. "Your financial team was laundering money through shell companies a 5-year-old could trace. I'm creating legal shields so complex the FBI would need a team of forensic accountants to even start asking questions." He loved her ruthless intelligence. Most of his lovers had been decorative, arm candy who knew better than to speak about business. Zara was a weapon, carefully aimed and utterly deadly. "I need to handle some cleanup with the corrupt FBI agent," he said, kissing her forehead. "Lorenzo will double the security. Stay inside, Spillezza." She rolled her eyes. "As if I'm going anywhere." The morning passed quietly. Zara continued her work, occasionally sipping the espresso Dante's personal chef had prepared. Around noon, Marco arrived, Dante's most trusted captain, childhood friend, a man who knew more about the family secrets than anyone except Dante himself. Something felt off. Marco's usual confident swagger was replaced by nervous energy. He kept checking his phone, his fingers tapping an erratic rhythm against the ceramic coffee mug. "How are you settling in?" Marco asked, his gaze too intense. Zara studied him. Years of forensic work had trained her to read subtle tells. Marco's pupils were dilated. His breathing was slightly irregular. He was lying about something. "I'm adjusting," she responded carefully. "Dante's been unexpectedly protective." Marco laughed, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Unexpected? For Dante, protecting what's his is everything." A text pinged on his phone. Marco's hand jerked, nearly knocking over the coffee. He mumbled an excuse about checking something and stepped away, his movements too casual to be natural. Hours passed. The sunlight shifted, turning golden. Dante hadn't returned. Lorenzo assured her this was normal. Operations sometimes ran long, especially when cleaning up federal corruption. But something felt wrong. Marco returned at sunset, but he wasn't alone. 3 men followed him, their expensive suits doing little to hide the violence coiled in their muscles. Bratva soldiers. "Marco!" Zara's hand instinctively reached for the hidden knife Dante had taught her to always keep nearby. His eyes were dead. No remorse, no hesitation. "The Bratva has my sister's children," he said flatly. This was the only way. The soldiers moved. Zara realized with crystalline clarity that she was about to die. Not in a blaze of heroic resistance, but in a quiet Chicago penthouse, betrayed by the man who was supposed to be Dante's most trusted ally. Marco had just declared war, and Dante would burn the world to find her. The silence in the penthouse was razor-sharp, slicing through the tension like a well-honed blade. Marco's hands trembled. As he continued his confession, each word another nail in his own coffin. "They had my sister's children," he repeated, his voice breaking. "The Bratva. They showed me photos, threatened to—" Zara watched Dante's face, a study in controlled rage. His gray eyes had gone steel cold, the muscles in his jaw clenching and unclenching like a predator about to strike. She understood now. Everything had been a setup. Their retreat, the apparent safety, the careful plans, all of it was an elaborate trap. "How long?" Dante's voice was quiet. Too quiet. Marco couldn't meet his eyes. Months. Small information at first. Location details, security protocols, then bigger things. Dante's phone buzzed, then buzzed again. Then a cascade of alerts transformed the room's atmosphere from tense to explosive. Lorenzo burst through the door, blood on his tactical gear. Multiple hits. They're targeting every Cavaletti property simultaneously. The screens around them lit up with chaos. Security feeds showed armed men breaching warehouses, attacking communication centers, storming satellite offices. A coordinated strike designed to tear apart Dante's entire infrastructure. "Sophia?" Dante's first word was about his sister. Lorenzo responded instantly. "Secure, but we need to move. Now." Dante's attention split. Part calculating strategist, part protective brother, part wounded leader. His eyes locked with Zara's. "Stay here. Do not move." She knew better than to argue, but something in her gut twisted. The way Marco wouldn't look at her, the precision of the attacks, something felt wrong. "Dante," she called as he turned to leave. "Be careful." A ghost of a smile crossed his face. "Always bellezza." The moment the door sealed, Marco's entire demeanor shifted. No longer trembling, calculating. "You know this was always going to happen," he said to Zara. She understood then. Marco wasn't just a passive betrayer, he was an active participant. "Your sister's children," Zara said softly. "They were never really in danger, were they?" Marco's smile was cold. "Smart woman. That's why he likes you." The first sounds came from outside the secure room. Footsteps. Too heavy. Too many. Bratva soldiers. Zara's training kicked in. Dante had taught her more than just financial strategies over these months. He'd taught her survival. 3 men burst through the reinforced door. She was already moving, using the room's layout as a weapon. A vase became a projectile, a chair, a blocking mechanism. Her body remembered every combat lesson Dante had drilled into her. She took down the first soldier with a precise strike to his throat. The second caught her with a glancing blow that sent her sliding across the marble floor. But she rolled, came up fighting. Marco watched, almost curious. "You won't win," he said quietly. The third soldier grabbed her from behind. No matter how she fought, the numbers were overwhelming. 1 became 2. 2 became 4. Her last coherent thought was of Dante. Then darkness. On Dante's encrypted phone, the security feed captured everything, her desperate fight, her determination, the moment she was overwhelmed. And then, silence. Her final scream cut through the connection just before it went dead. Miles away, Dante felt something inside him break. Marco knew his fate was sealed the moment the last soldier reported in. The Bratva cleaned their tracks efficiently. No loose ends. As the execution squad entered, Marco didn't beg. He understood the game. He had played it and lost. 1 precise shot ended his betrayal. In the penthouse, Zara was gone. The room told a story of violence, overturned furniture, shattered glass, her blood a stark reminder of what had been lost. Dante's world had just changed forever, and someone was going to pay. The penthouse looked like a war zone. Shattered glass crunched under Dante's Italian leather shoes, blood spatter decorating white marble walls like abstract art. His breath came in controlled, rage-contained exhales as Vincent reported the damage. 12 of our men dead. 3 legitimate businesses burned. The Russian connections have been systematically targeting our infrastructure. Vincent's voice was clinical, professional, even in chaos. Dante's fingers closed around the engagement ring he'd been planning to give Zara. The small diamond caught the late afternoon light, looking incongruously delicate against the destruction surrounding him. His mind replayed her last moments, her scream cutting through the security feed before everything went dark. "Marco," he said quietly. The name felt like a poison in his mouth. Vincent nodded. "We found him. Murder-suicide. The Bratva cleaned their own trail, eliminated potential witnesses within his family." The betrayal cut deeper than any physical wound. Marco had been more than a soldier. He'd been family, childhood friends, raised together in the tight-knit world of Chicago's criminal aristocracy. And now he'd sold out everything for what? Fear? Protection? Dante's phone buzzed. Traffic camera feeds showing Zara's abduction scrolled across the screen. Dark SUV, no plates, professional extraction. These weren't street thugs. These were trained professionals who knew exactly how to take a high-value target. "They want a war," Dante said, his voice so cold it made Vincent take an involuntary step back. "Then they'll get a war." He began making calls. Old debts, forgotten promises, silent agreements made in dark rooms years ago. Dante called them all in. Other crime families who owed him, international connections, even certain government contacts who preferred his particular brand of problem-solving. Each call was a thread, weaving a network of vengeance. The first wave hit within hours. Bratva-owned restaurants exploded across 3 states. Shipping containers burned in international ports. Financial records mysteriously vanished. Bank accounts froze. Shell companies collapsed. Dante wasn't just fighting. He was dismantling an entire criminal infrastructure piece by systematic piece. Chicago's underworld went silent. Even the FBI backed off, terrified the escalating conflict would spill into civilian sectors. Dante moved like a ghost, leaving destruction in his wake, each action calculated and precise. 3 days passed, no word of Zara. Vincent watched his boss transform. Dante didn't sleep, didn't eat, just planned, called, executed. The man who had always been controlled was now a controlled explosion, waiting to detonate. When the video arrived, the entire room felt the shift in atmospheric pressure. Zara, alive, barely. Her face was bruised, one eye swollen shut, but her remaining eye burned with defiance. Behind her, the Bratva leader Dmitry Volkov stood, knife pressed against her throat. "Dante Cavaletti," Volkov's accented voice dripped with mockery. "We have a proposal." The terms were simple and brutal. Zara's life for Dante's complete surrender, territory, power, his own public execution, a message to every criminal organization watching. Vincent watched Dante's face. No emotion, no reaction, just cold, absolute rage. "Prepare everything," Dante said quietly. "We go to war." The video ended. But something in Dante's eyes told Vincent this wasn't just war. This was extinction. Every Bratva member in Chicago would cease to exist, not just defeated, erased, and Zara would be rescued, no matter the cost. Dante Cavaletti was coming, and hell was coming with him. The video flickered to life, harsh fluorescent lights casting a sickly glow across the abandoned meatpacking plant's concrete walls. Zara Mitchell sat tied to a metal chair, her face a canvas of bruises that told a story of brutal interrogation. Blood traced a delicate line from her split lip, but her eyes burned with defiance that no amount of violence could extinguish. Dmitry Volkov's hand gripped her chin, forcing her to face the camera. His thick Russian accent dripped with contempt. "Mr. Cavaletti will be watching, and he will see exactly what happens to those who challenge the Bratva." Zara's gaze never wavered. She'd learned enough from Dante to understand that every moment was a potential opportunity. The sounds around her, distant machinery, the specific echo of metal against concrete, the faint rhythm of a cooling system, told a story her captors didn't realize she was tracking. When Volkov turned slightly, she caught the camera's lens. Her lips moved almost imperceptibly, mouthing words in the Italian Dante had taught her during their long nights strategizing. "Vecchio Matatoio, Nord Ovest, Tre Ponti." Old slaughterhouse. Northwest. 3 bridges. The message was coded, designed to be understood only by someone who knew exactly how to interpret it. Someone who would be watching every second of this video with a predator's intensity. Volkov's demand was simple and brutal. Dante would surrender his entire Chicago territory. He would come alone to this location and submit to public execution, a message to every other criminal organization that challenging the Bratva meant certain death. The video would be distributed as proof of his submission. "You have 48 hours, Cavaletti," Volkov snarled into the camera. "Surrender or watch her die piece by piece." Behind the scenes, Dante's world was already moving. His technical team analyzed every pixel of the video, using Zara's subtle communication to triangulate the exact location. His soldiers, invisible and deadly, began infiltrating the area surrounding the old meatpacking plant. They appeared as homeless men, maintenance workers, delivery drivers, a ghost network that would tighten like a noose. Dante made preparations as if he were walking to certain death. He met with his siblings, ensuring their protection. Vincent, his consigliere, would manage the empire if he didn't return. Legal documents were signed, contingency plans established. To the world, it would look like a man preparing for his final moments. But Dante Cavaletti was never a man who played by anyone's rules but his own. Each preparation was calculated. Each movement was a chess move designed to look like surrender while actually being an intricate attack. The man the FBI called the Ghost of Chicago had earned his nickname through strategies that defied expectation. His hidden arsenal was extensive: weapons sewn into clothing, communication devices that couldn't be detected, escape routes mapped with surgical precision. The Bratva believed they were setting a trap. In reality, they were walking into Dante's carefully constructed web. When the 48 hours elapsed, Dante arrived exactly as demanded. Alone, unarmed. Walking into the meatpacking plant with the calm of a man who knew something his enemies did not. The plant's massive doors closed behind him, industrial metal clanging with finality. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting long shadows across the concrete floor. Volkov's men watched, weapons ready, believing they were witnessing the final moments of Chicago's most dangerous mafia boss. They didn't realize that every step Dante took was a predator's approach, that beneath his calm exterior, a storm of calculated violence was gathering, that the man they thought they had defeated was about to unleash a reckoning that would redefine the very meaning of vengeance. Dante's eyes, cold and gray as Chicago winter, scanned the room. In the distance, he could hear Zara. Not her voice, not yet, but something more primal, her spirit, her defiance, calling him forward. The trap was set, and Dante Cavaletti was ready to spring it. The cold steel of the meatpacking plant's floor bit into Dante's knees. Blood trickled from a split eyebrow, but his gaze remained locked on Dmitry Volkov, unwavering, calculating. Cameras rolled, live stream broadcasting to every crime family watching this potential execution. Volkov's fingers traced the edge of a razor-sharp hunting knife, enjoying every moment of anticipated triumph. "The mighty ghost of Chicago," Volkov sneered, his Russian accent thick with mockery. "Not so powerful now." Dante said nothing. Each drop of blood, each moment of apparent submission was carefully orchestrated. His men were already in position. Hackers waited for his signal, hidden ceramic blades pressed against his skin, concealed where Volkov's search had missed. Across the room, Zara stood barely conscious. Her eyes, despite the bruises, despite the obvious torture, burned with defiance. One quick glance passed between them, a lifetime of understanding compressed into a single moment. She remembered his training, every brutal lesson about survival he'd taught her during those weeks in his penthouse. How to break a chokehold, how to create a moment of distraction, how to turn vulnerability into weapon. Volkov pressed the knife against Zara's throat, his fingers twisting her arm. "Watch him break," he told his men. "Watch the great Cavaletti die like the dog he is." Dante's earpiece, invisible to everyone, crackled. Vincent's voice, calm and precise. "Systems are ready. Your mark." A single blink. The signal. Darkness erupted. Every light in the massive facility cut simultaneously. Emergency generators failed. Complete, absolute blackness consumed the space. Chaos exploded. In the darkness, Dante became something beyond human. Ceramic blades sliced through his restraints in seconds. The first 3 Bratva soldiers died before they realized an attack was happening. Throat, kidney, carotid artery, surgical, silent. Gunfire erupted from multiple entry points. His soldiers, positioned throughout the facility, struck with coordinated precision. The sound of combat filled the darkness, bodies falling, weapons discharging, men screaming. Dante moved like a phantom, each step calculated, each movement designed to bring him closer to Zara. Volkov realized too late that he'd been outmaneuvered. The knife wavered at Zara's throat as panic replaced his earlier confidence. "Don't move," he snarled. Zara's response was immediate. The chokehold break Dante had drilled into her muscles for weeks activated. A sudden twist, a precise strike to Volkov's wrist. The knife clattered away. In that moment of distraction, Dante emerged from the darkness. 3 shots rang out, clean, precise. The first bullet shattered Volkov's kneecap. The second struck his shoulder. The third, directly between the eyes. Lights flickered back to life. Volkov's body collapsed, steam rising from the precise wound. Zara stood breathing hard, blood and bruises marking her skin, but her eyes were pure fire. Dante reached her, pulling her close. No words needed. Their bodies spoke a language of survival, of victory, of a bond forged in the most impossible circumstances. "You're safe," he whispered against her hair. "It's over." Around them, his soldiers finished clearing the facility. Bodies of Bratva members littered the floor, a message written in blood about what happens when you challenge Dante Cavalletti. Vincent's voice crackled through the earpiece. "Building is secure. No survivors." Dante's hand traced Zara's face, checking her injuries. Her fingers intertwined with his, a gesture both tender and deadly. They had survived. They had won. And the world would never be the same. The armored SUV's interior felt like a tomb, silence broken only by the steady beep of medical monitors. Dante's hands, still stained with Volkov's blood, gripped Zara's pale fingers. She looked smaller somehow, the fierce woman who'd survived weeks of Bratva torture, now fragile as spun glass. The emergency medical team worked quickly, their movements precise and urgent. An IV dripped clear fluid into her arm. Bandages covered wounds that made Dante's jaw clench with barely controlled rage. Each injury was a promise of future retribution. "Stay with me, Bellezza," he murmured, the Italian endearment sliding between clenched teeth. Her eyes flickered open, those beautiful brown eyes that had challenged him from the moment they met. Now they were clouded, distant. Trauma carved deep lines around her mouth, transforming her face into a landscape of survival. "They're all dead," she whispered. Not a question, a statement. Dante's response was a razor-sharp nod. "Every last one." The medical team exchanged glances. They'd seen Dante Cavalletti's reputation, knew the stories of the ghost of Chicago, but none had witnessed this version. A predator transformed into a protector, violence leashed by something deeper than vengeance. At the secure medical facility, Zara underwent extensive examinations. Broken ribs, multiple lacerations, signs of prolonged psychological trauma. The doctors spoke in clinical terms, but Dante heard only the violence done to his woman. Sophia arrived within hours, her young face etched with a maturity no teenager should possess. She'd survived her own Bratva nightmare, understood Zara's fractured spirit in ways others couldn't. While Dante handled the systematic elimination of remaining Bratva connections, Sophia sat with Zara, holding her hand, speaking soft words of survival. Over the next week, Chicago's underworld transformed. Dante moved with surgical precision. Corrupt FBI agents died in accidents, car crashes, apparent heart attacks, mysterious workplace incidents. Crime families watched in terrified silence as the ghost systematically dismantled anyone who threatened his territory. But inside the secure wing of his private medical complex, Dante's world narrowed to Zara's recovery. The nightmares were brutal. She'd wake screaming, body rigid with remembered terror. Dante would gather her into his arms, speaking low and steady in Italian and English, his massive frame a protective shield against invisible demons. "You're safe," he'd repeat. "I've got you." Physical recovery was one challenge. Psychological healing was another battlefield, entirely. Zara flinched from unexpected touches. Loud noises sent her spiraling. Only Dante's presence seemed to anchor her, his dangerous energy paradoxically creating the only safe space she'd known. Vincent and Lorenzo managed the external operations, understanding Dante's singular focus. The empire would be rebuilt, but first, Zara's healing. Weeks passed. Slowly, carefully, she began reclaiming herself. Financial reports from her forensic work arrived, physical therapy sessions, small victories that rebuilt her sense of control. One night, watching her sleep peacefully for the first time since her rescue, Dante made a silent vow. The world that had tried to break her would learn a fundamental truth. Anyone who threatened Zara Mitchell would face consequences beyond imagination. His fingers traced the healing wounds on her arms, a tactile promise of protection. She wasn't just a witness or a captive anymore. She was his partner, his queen. and the underworld would bow accordingly. The ghost of Chicago had found something more powerful than vengeance. He'd found love, dangerous, transformative, absolute. The rooftop garden had become her sanctuary. Soft evening light bathed the carefully tended plants, a stark contrast to the violence that had defined her recent months. Zara's fingers traced the delicate petals of a rose, her movements deliberate and healing. 3 months of recovery had transformed her, physically stronger, emotionally more resilient, but forever changed. The therapist said healing wasn't linear. Some days she could breathe, could touch Dante without flinching. Other days, the memories of her captivity pressed against her skin like phantom bruises. Today was a good day. The scars were healing, both external and internal. She heard his footsteps before she saw him. Dante moved like a predator. Always. Even now, when he was trying to be soft. His presence filled the space, dark and intense, a shadow against the golden sunset. "How long have you been standing there?" Zara didn't turn, continuing to tend the plants. "Long enough to watch you," he responded, his voice a low rumble that still sent shivers down her spine. When he approached, she didn't tense. Progress, she thought, real progress. His hand touched her shoulder, gentle despite the strength she knew lived in those fingers. Fingers that could kill. Fingers that had killed to bring her home. "We need to talk," Dante said. Zara turned, meeting his gaze. The gray eyes that had once terrified her now held a complexity she understood. Pain, protection, passion, love, though he'd never used that word so simply. "About what?" she asked, knowing exactly what. He pulled something from his pocket. The ring was beautiful, platinum, with a black diamond that caught the dying sunlight. Not ostentatious, but powerful. Like Dante himself. "I'm offering you everything," he said. "My world, my empire, my protection. But I need you to understand, I'm not changing. I'm still the man who will kill anyone who threatens what's mine. I'm still the ghost of Chicago. This isn't a transformation into some fairy tale prince." Zara smiled, a real smile, the first in months. "I never wanted a prince. I wanted you." Her response seemed to unlock something in him. Tension she hadn't even realized he was carrying dissolved. Dante dropped to one knee, not in submission, but in a gesture of profound vulnerability. "Marry me," he said. Not a question, a statement. "Yes," she answered immediately. The ring slid onto her finger. Perfect fit, always perfect with Dante. Behind them, his siblings watched from the windows. Sophia, who had become like a sister, grinned. Vincent, his consigliere, nodded in approval. This wasn't just a marriage. This was a merger of two worlds, her legal expertise, his criminal infrastructure, a partnership in every sense. "They're watching," Zara murmured. Dante's laugh was pure dark humor. "Let them." He pulled her close, his hands spanning her waist. The touch that once would have terrified her now felt like home, protected, claimed, not owned, partnered. "We'll rebuild," he said. "Legitimize more operations. Use your forensic skills to make our money untraceable. Create something that can't be touched. Our child will know both worlds," Zara said, thinking of the future growing inside her. "The light I came from, the darkness you rule." Dante's hand moved to her still, flat belly. Protective, possessive. "Our child will rule them both." The sun set over Chicago, their city now, their empire, their future. In the rooftop garden where they first truly saw each other, Zara Mitchell became more than a witness, more than a survivor. She became a queen, standing beside the devil who would burn the world to keep her safe, wearing a ring that was both a promise and a warning. Theirs was not a love story. It was a war story, and they had just declared victory. The Chicago winter bit like razor blades, but Dante felt nothing except rage. 48 hours of tactical planning had led to this moment. Finding Zara. The abandoned meatpacking plant loomed gray and industrial, steam rising from ancient ventilation systems. Dmitry Volkov thought he was clever, staging this exchange in a place that screamed decay and death. What he didn't know is that Dante had already mapped every entrance, every shadow. Dante walked forward, deliberately allowing himself to be seen. His $1,000 suit was immaculate, his movements controlled. Each step was a calculated risk, every breath a potential weapon. Behind his calm exterior, a hurricane of violence waited to be unleashed. The main processing floor was cavernous, metal hooks still hanging from rusted tracks. Volkov stood 15 feet away, Zara pressed against him, a knife tracing her throat. Her eyes met Dante's, not frightened, but fierce. She'd been trained well in those weeks of forced proximity, and even now captured, she radiated defiance. "Cavaletti," Volkov sneered. "You actually came alone." Dante's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Did you expect anything less?" The Bratva leader believed he held all the power. He didn't realize Dante's soldiers were already in position, hidden in the shadows, thermal imaging, tracking every heartbeat, every potential movement. Each of them had strict orders. Do not engage until Dante's signal. Volkov pressed the knife harder against Zara's neck. A thin line of blood appeared, bright and crimson against her dark skin. Dante's hand twitched, the only external sign of the murderous rage building inside him. "Drop your weapons," Volkov commanded. "All of them, slowly." Dante began removing his weapons, each movement deliberate: a shoulder holster, an ankle piece, a knife from his belt. Each weapon placed carefully on the concrete floor. Zara watched, her expression unreadable. What Volkov didn't see was the thin wire running along Dante's sleeve, connected to a microtransmitter. What he didn't know was that surrender wasn't in Dante Cavaletti's vocabulary. "On your knees," Volkov ordered. Dante dropped to his knees, never breaking eye contact with Zara. A silent communication passed between them. A promise. A covenant written in shared trauma and unexpected love. The moment stretched. Tension coiled like a serpent ready to strike. Then everything happened at once. The lights cut. Absolute darkness consumed the warehouse. In that perfect moment of disorientation, Dante moved. Not human. A phantom. A predator. Pure lethal intention compressed into muscle and bone. The first two Bratva soldiers died before they could raise their weapons. Dante's hands were weapons, precise and brutal. A crushed windpipe, a severed artery, calculated violence that transformed murder into art. Zara wasn't passive. Using a move Dante had taught her during their months together, she drove her elbow backward into Volkov's solar plexus. He staggered, momentarily stunned. Gunshots erupted, Dante's hidden teams engaging, but he focused on one target: Volkov. The Bratva leader recovered quickly, lunging with the knife. Dante twisted, letting the blade slice past him, then grabbed Volkov's wrist in a grip that crushed bone. "You touched what was mine," he said, voice low and dangerous. 3 shots rang out. Precise. Execution style. Volkov dropped, 3 perfect holes in his skull. When emergency lights flickered on, the scene was carnage. 12 bodies, blood pooling on concrete, and in the center, Dante holding Zara, her body pressed against his, both breathing hard from the violence they'd just survived. "You came for me," she whispered. "Always," he responded. The war was over, but their story was just beginning.